So you want to become the perfect student, that student, it girl student, Pinterest student, the one that always gets straight A's effortlessly. And at this point, you probably know what you need to do. Study more, be organized, use the Pomodoro method, test yourself, make engaging notes, but nothing ever sticks. You try your new study habits and routines for like 2 days, then crash, and ultimately keep being the same old chaotic, hot mess expressed version of yourself, while those other perfect that students in your grade keep acing their exams without seeming to break a sweat. But no more. In this video, I will go over all of my top secret, non-basic study tips and hacks that actually work and will help you finally see improvements in your grades based on my experience of ranking number 2 in a class of 500 plus people in high school, having straight A's all throughout middle school, high school, and now college, and getting into 3 Ivy League universities. So here are 3 main issues that I've personally faced and I feel like the majority of students face when it comes to studying and grades. 1, you don't know how to study. 2, you don't study enough. Or 3, you don't study efficiently. So for potential problem number 1, this is just the situation where you don't yet know the strategies and techniques that work for you and help you get top grades. So here are the general rules for playing the game of getting good grades. First, it's really important to note the weighting of the assignments and how important the exams are in order to prioritize your time on the assignments or exams that are worth the most and making sure that you put most of your effort into that. 2 is knowing what's on the exams. Obviously, you won't know exactly what's on the exams beforehand usually, but essentially knowing if the majority of the exam will be based on the lectures, on the textbook, or on both. Also, after you get the feedback for your first few assignments or exam, try to remember what the exam was like and whether it was more from the lectures or textbooks, and just overall analyze the exam and the first couple of assignments and try to figure out what the teacher wants. Also, if you have quizzes in your class, then I recommend trying to write down any questions you remember after the quizzes and seeing if they pop up on the exam later. A lot of teachers reuse questions from quizzes. I've seen this a lot with my classes, and that way you can get free points because the same questions popped up on both the quizzes and the exam. Lastly, again, if there is any access to past exams or past papers or practice questions in the textbook, it's great to use them to review and see where your knowledge gaps are, and also again see if any of the questions end up popping up on the exams. Next, if there is a study guide for the class, I just straight up use that. I don't really take notes anywhere else, since if the teacher made a study guide or their own notes for the class, it's very unlikely that they'll deviate a lot from the study guide, and it gives you a great structured format to know what to study and what to prioritize. So I'll quickly give 2 examples from this exact semester that I'm taking right now. So for the neuroscience class, it had a study guide, so I just made a Quizlet matching the guide and I copy and pasted from the textbook when I could, so I didn't have to manually type everything. And so I was going based off of the textbook, but if there were parts of the study guide that were clearly just from the lecture, then I would watch that portion of the lecture and take the notes from the lecture for that part. And I still got a 96 on the exam, even though I didn't sit and watch all of the lectures. The same thing for my abnormal psychology class, which I got 100% on the exam. So the professor said beforehand and also in the syllabus that all of the questions are from the textbook. So I haven't watched any of the lectures yet. I just hand wrote the entire 3 chapters of the textbook and then just reread them a couple times before the exam. So a major thing here is once you find something that works for you, even if everyone on the internet says handwriting is terrible and passive reading is bad, honestly, if it works for you, just keep doing it. Don't let anyone shame your weird study methods or your inefficient study methods. Just find something that works for you and that helps you get the grades that you want. Okay, so problem number 2 is if you don't study enough or have enough time. So in this case, I highly recommend cutting some extracurriculars if you just realize you have way too many, which I have had experienced in the past. Also, I recommend tracking your time for a week or 2 and just seeing where all your time goes, and also tracking how much time you actually study, because for instance, if it turns out you only study like 5 hours a week, then you probably know that something you need to work on is gradually building up how much time you can sit at your desk and study. Also, a major tip that really helps me in high school when I had a million extracurriculars and a million classes is using your time in school wisely. If you actually set that as a goal to use every free minute that you can in school to study, it turns out that there sometimes is actually a lot of free time that just kind of floats around. So use your time wisely at school if you can, and you'll find that you have a lot more time for studying than you expected during the day in school. And problem number 3 is that you don't study efficiently. The most important thing to remember here is that the hours that you spend studying does not equal success. success. Something that I do to really save a lot of time is that sometimes I do assignments without even doing the weekly readings or the lectures. I know that I sound horrible right now, but I will literally read the assignment and then I'll find the part of the textbook or the chapter or the lecture that is supposed to be for the assignment, and then I will do the assignment going off of the textbook already, that portion that's supposed to be for the assignment, because honestly, when it comes to studying efficiently, you do not have to handwrite your notes for everything. You do not have to read every single sentence of every single chapter or listen to every single lecture and take 500 notes on them. Honestly, I don't do that for every single class and every single lecture and every single chapter, and I can still get A's just by reading through the parts that I need to. And yeah, it really is just about playing the game that is getting straight A's and figuring out what is the bare minimum sometimes that you need to do to get those A's. Another thing that top students do is that they definitely use outside resources that help them be more efficient and also study better. So for example, I definitely use Quizlet all the time. I will sometimes use other people's study sets. I'll find the ones that were made for my specific class, for my specific university, and then instead of making my own Quizlet, I'll just go off of theirs. And also, if you look up certain teacher websites, either your own teacher website or you can type in like a generic class like AP Chemistry, Weebly online website, you can usually find a ton of free notes, PDFs, documents that teachers have uploaded to their websites, and actually use those as your notes instead of making them yourself. So definitely don't be afraid of using the internet to research and find amazing resources. Another one of my ultimate secrets or hacks for getting those straight A's and being the perfect student is Grammarly, the sponsor of today's video. So I first downloaded Grammarly a little over 3 years ago, and I have never looked back since. And as a college senior majoring in psychology, I have to write a lot of papers and essays, and consequently I tend to miss a lot of minor errors that I make, such as the time I accidentally misspelled a researcher's last name for half the essay. But thankfully Grammarly caught that mistake, since it's an AI-powered writing tool that is easy to use and will help you with your writing, from brainstorming to even citations. And I know that AI is everywhere now, but trust me, Grammarly's AI really upped the game and makes it even more useful than before. You can access Grammarly's AI features by clicking Grammarly's logo, and when you're stuck with starting your paper and have writer's block, Grammarly can even help you kick off things with ideas, outlines, and tips. Grammarly also can help you paraphrase and rewrite instantly, making it super easy to polish and fine-tune your essay before submitting it for grading. Grammarly also helps you show when you use generative AI to maintain transparency in your work, making it easy to credit your use of AI. And so Grammarly is free to use and try out, and Grammarly is a must-have for all students. Sign up and download for free using my link, and if you want to get access to extra features, get 20% off Grammarly Premium with the same link. Of course, if you're really struggling with a specific topic, absolutely reach out to a tutor, absolutely see, because usually most universities and schools have free tutoring, so try to see if you can find any student tutors or free tutors. Absolutely reach out to upperclassmen if you can, and definitely use your teacher as well as a resource, especially if they're a really nice teacher. Go to their office hours, visit them at lunch if you can, and definitely use them as well. Okay, so now let's talk about the mindset of a successful, perfect it girl student thing, blah blah. Okay, so basically when it comes to the mindset, in my opinion, there are three main pillars of this, and number one is the confidence pillar, which is basically the belief that you can improve. Because if you don't believe it, you're honestly deep down going to just think, I could be doing something fun instead of studying and sitting here, and it's not going to make a difference. So the way, in my opinion, that you develop this confidence or this belief that studying does lead to better grades, or that changing the way you study will lead to better grades, it only comes from results, honestly. I understand some people swear by affirmations and all that, and if that works for you, good for you. But in my experience, for instance, with math and science, which I really struggled with for the longest time, and I didn't believe that I could ever get good grades in them, is that you have to basically treat it as an experiment and be like, okay, I'm gonna really try to improve and learn this subject and just see if I can really try for like a semester, for instance. And then once you actually see tangible results, then you'll start to develop that confidence that you can change. And it's that belief that you can do it that will keep you resilient and motivated and determined throughout the semester, and not have a mental breakdown every time you don't get the results you want or you get a bad grade. And that ties into pillar number two, which is the growth mindset. But it's basically that mindset that every failure is something to learn from and shows you what doesn't work, rather than internalizing that failure and basically concluding that you suck. And again, in my opinion, you'll only deeply believe that failure is not the end of the world once it actually comes true and you actually learn from failures and you actually bounce back. And that's why pivoting or changing study techniques, if nothing is working for you, is super important, so you don't keep doing the same thing over and over again and setting yourself up for failure. So for instance, if handwriting notes is just too slow or too boring for you and you can't concentrate, then definitely try watching videos or making flashcards or mind maps or something completely different and see if that works for you. And the mindset basically is just, even if I figure out how to study a year from now and it takes a year of failures and trying different methods and nothing working, it's better that I eventually figure it out in a year than just continuing to do the same thing that I did for the past several years and continuing to get bad grades. And the last pillar is simply placing importance on grades. So obviously, making grades a priority is important for getting good grades, because if you don't care about grades, if you don't think it's important, then you're just not going to prioritize it, you're not going to study a lot, and you're not going to get good grades. So I highly recommend trying to figure out why you want to get good grades and just really thinking about it. And it's probably not going to come to you in like 3 seconds. It might take several months even, but just really thinking like, why are the grades important to you? Is it for your parents? Do you want to make them proud? Do you want to get a good job in the future? Are you obsessed with a certain subject and you really want to learn it and be amazing? And it really doesn't matter ultimately what that reason is. You don't have to tell anyone, but the stronger your emotions are about that reason, the better, because ultimately when you're sleep deprived, when you're tired, it's remembering that reason that will help you continue pushing through instead of going on your phone or giving up or not caring. All right, so part 4 is playing to your strengths and weaknesses, and it's just basically trying to know yourself and how you work. So for example, I know that I have this thing where basically like I really get an adrenaline rush right before exams or deadlines, and I work 30 times more efficiently the day of a deadline or right before an exam, and that if I start studying a week before, I'll be a lot less efficient than if I start studying 3 days before the exam. Am I saying to cram? Not at all. It's still great to at least have the Quizlet ready or the study guide filled out before the exam. But I do know that basically I will anyways be way more efficient a couple days before the exam versus like a month before the exam. That's how I work. I know that maybe that doesn't sound like the best advice in the world. Again, I'm not saying to try to just straight up study everything the day of the exam. That's pretty much impossible. But I do know that I tend to work a lot faster and more efficient before deadlines than I do a month before deadlines. That's kind of how my brain works, and I try to use that to my advantage. Also, I know that I work a lot more efficiently when I see a finish line versus when I feel like a project is enormous and never ending, which is why I like to break up my assignments or my classes or the things that I have to do into little chunks, and then I know that I'll have a break after I do a certain amount of things. So if you get overwhelmed a lot, I also recommend breaking up tasks into little pieces and just not looking at the rest of your to-do list and only looking at like the next 3 things, then taking a break, then putting the next 3 things on list, then taking a break. And last but not least is surrounding yourself with an artificial community or a real life community of peers who are also interested in studying. This is just really helpful when you feel like you completely don't care about studying or school, or you're just really lacking motivation. It can be really helpful to find maybe like 5 to 10 people on YouTube, on Instagram. It can also be like Hermione Granger, Rory Gilmore, whoever you see as an academic inspiration, and watching them in your free time to kind of remind yourself to kind of glorify the process of studying. And that way I'm getting motivated and inspired to study even on my breaks, instead of getting completely distracted by a fantasy book or some really intriguing murder mystery show or something like that that completely distracts my brain from studying and from school. So basically, use your study breaks in your Pomodoro sessions or between study sessions to watch study people or study inspirations to kind of help focus your brain on studying, and basically pretend that you are Rory Gilmore or Hermione Granger while you're studying.